Welcome to the Making Schools Work podcast, a podcast for everyone in education. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe that every school has the potential to be great. Whatever you do in the school, whatever your job may be, let's talk about things that make schools work. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Making Schools Work podcast. This is Ashley Shaw, and I'm back with another summer highlight episode. This summer, we're looking back across our first 2 seasons and pulling together some of the strongest, most practical moments from past conversations. We've talked about artificial intelligence, career readiness, and how educators can make big ideas more usable in real classrooms and real schools. Today, we're turning to school leadership. And just like the other episodes in the series, this is not going to be a generic leadership matters conversation. We know leadership matters. The real question is, what do strong leaders actually do? Across the podcast, we've heard from principals, leadership coaches, featured speakers, and school teams who have talked about what it takes to build trust, use data well, develop teachers, strengthen instruction, and create a culture where people know what they're working towards. And when I looked back across those conversations, 6 practical moves stood out. We'll start with clarity because before a school can move together, people have to know what they're moving towards. In this clip, Dr. Marck Abraham talks about why school culture has to be driven by clear, repeated communication.
Number one, the strategy has to be messaging, right? I do this with principals when I go into their building. I say, hey, assistant principal, leadership coach, lead teacher, whoever's in their cabinet, I want you to write down what the principal's focus is for this year and their vision. And I have every one of them write it down. And I say, principal, you write it down. And then I look at them and then we have a conversation about it. Most times the leadership team is completely disjointed. One person thinks one thing, another person thinks another thing, another person thinks another thing. And I always say, they say, well, kind of close. I said, well, if you're kind of close, you're not going to hit the mark. See, for your culture to be driven, it needs to be driven by clear communication. What is it that's important? And it needs to be stated over and over and over and over again where people understand exactly the direction that you're going in, exactly what's important. So number one, principals, if you're watching this, you have to have a clear message. At our school, we believe in X, Y, and Z.
That is a practical move leaders can use immediately. And once the focus is clear, leaders need to help people see whether they are making progress. That brings us to data and how leaders can use it in a way that builds ownership instead of anxiety. Data can feel like something adults do to students. Adults collect it, adults analyze it, adults talk about it in meetings, adults decide what it means. But Dr. Natasha Brown describes something different at Westover Middle School. She talks to students directly about their data, their goals, and the kind of school they are building together. And what I like about this clip is that it does not make data feel cold. It makes data feel part of the culture.
I meet with my students. I started doing it last year. We saw great gains for it. So I have these quarterly meetings with them and I bring them all into the gym, every grade level. I'm pushing about at least 250 students on each grade level. So I bring them into the gym. I put all the teachers out because I'm just like, it's me and you. So you can say what you need to say. So I give them these expectations for learning, expectations for their behavior or attendance. And then I actually put their data before them. This is how well you're doing. This is how you're progressing. They know that it's always a conversation. They can come to me with their assessments or they can show me how they're growing. We're data-driven school, so they know how to look at their data. So it's important to them. I pull report cards. When it's report card day, I'm standing in the hallway and either they're trying to hide behind somebody or they're running up to me with the report card because they know that I'm going to check. And if it doesn't meet my expectation, I'm like, I'm coming back. I'm going to look at it. And they know I'm going to follow up. Even with their assessments, they know I'm checking their previous data. I have conversations with them. So they know it's important to me. It is important to their teachers and it is becoming a part of who they are. It's important for them because they want to see how well they can do. And I encourage them.
That is a very different use of data. It is not data as a spreadsheet hidden in a folder. It is not data as a surprise. It's not data as a punishment. It is data as a conversation. And for leaders, the practical question is, do students know what they are trying to improve? That does not mean every student needs a 40-page data report. Please do not give middle schoolers a 40-page data report. Many adults do not deserve that either. But students can understand goals, they can understand growth, they can understand what it means to improve attendance, behavior, coursework, or assessment performance. And when data is framed as something they can own, it can be motivating instead of scary. That kind of culture does not happen by accident. It takes leadership, but it also takes shared ownership. And that leads to the next move. One of the hardest leadership shifts is moving from carrying the work to building the conditions for other people to carry it with you. Dr. Bethany Wilson, principal of Gladeville Middle School in Tennessee, talked about the difference between I work and we work.
Opening a new school, you think a lot at the beginning about the building and how cool it is and how beautiful it is and the shiny floors and the brand new equipment. It was fun to get to shop. I got to shop like crazy and pick out uniforms and band instruments and all the things. But I knew from the beginning, and when I met with cohorts of teachers who were thinking about applying, I said, this is not going to be about the building. I can tell you that the building is the least interesting and exciting and wonderful thing. So please don't come here because you want a nicer looking classroom or new desks. We can take care of that, of course, but I want you to come here to build something. So I tried to be very intentional about that. And I said, also, please don't come here because you don't like your current school. That's not a reason to go somewhere new. I want you to come because you want to build something together. And when I walk around, I'm proud to see the level of cooperation and coordination among the teachers. They are always out in between classes chatting and joking around. To me, that's the hallmark of a school you want to be in. There's a lot of research to support if you're friends with your coworkers and you feel safe and comfortable with them, that coming to school hopefully will be a joy. And it makes this time of year when it is stressful tolerable, right? Because we're in this work together. And I really see a level of cooperation here that I'd never got to experience as a teacher.
That is such a useful leadership frame. Build the school people actually want to teach in. That is not soft, that's strategic. A school where teachers cooperate, coordinate, and feel part of something bigger is a school with more capacity. It is also a school where the principal is not the only person holding the whole thing together with caffeine and calendar reminders. A practical move here is to look at one piece of the school improvement work and ask, who else needs to help shape this? Who already has expertise we are not using? Where are we asking for buy-in after decisions are made instead of inviting people into the thinking earlier? What could become we work instead of I work?
I will say that I am like an ultra type A, and I struggle a little bit with control and trust because I think those of us who are that way, we just like to we hate group work and we like to do it all. We don't trust anyone else to do it. And that has been another area of growth for me. Leading is very humbling because you realize all your flaws. Every month, you realize how your flaws can hold you
all
back.
get revealed one by one.
I have an aspiring leadership group, and I told them the hardest thing is you're so vulnerable. I love how Todd Whitaker says, when the principal sneezes, the school gets a cold because you influence everything and you don't get to have the off days, the bad days. People notice. Everyone's looking at you. So I had to start thinking about how to really expand the work to being we work and not I work. I've always loved having thought partners. So my assistant principals, we are very collaborative. We're very much an admin team. I know some schools it's not like that, but we meet as a team. We PLC every week, asking for feedback from the teachers. If you ask, they will give it to you. I started having our leadership team write the strategic plan. They have written the strategic plan, with the exception of the first one that I wrote, every other year. There's a lot of busy work part of it that I will do later because they don't have that much time. When thinking about who to tap, you can't include all your teachers. So I looked at the best teachers and what they were doing. When I think about how to build capacity, it's about amplifying your top talent, making sure people know about that, what they're doing. With the shared leadership piece, it's really just inviting people to the table.
Shared leadership does not mean lowering expectations. It means building more people's ability to meet them. And one of the places leadership becomes most real is in the way leaders help teachers improve. That brings us to feedback. Principal Baruti Kafele gave several very practical ways leaders can lower their threat level of feedback conversation. And I think this section works best as a sequence because he's not giving one tip. He's describing a whole posture towards instructional leadership. First, he talks about the difference between a conference and a conversation.
That word conference, that's an ouch. That's an ouch word. Like it sounds like, oh God, I'm going into something. I'm going to could be, intimidating, conference, but conversation, man, that implies like we could kick back and, just talk. And that's what I want. I want that teacher so comfortable with me.
The word choice matters. Conference can sound like something formal, evaluative, and high stakes. Conversation signals that the teacher is part of the thinking. But Principal Kafele does not stop with language. He also talks about the physical setup of the conversation.
A lot of times I explain this to a lot of people. I took those meetings, those conversations out of my office because the bottom line is that's the principal's office. That's the assistant principal's office. But what if I could take it into your environment?
Right.
Such as during a prep, we have the conversation in your classroom or in the library or somewhere else that's neutral as opposed to the principal's office, right? That can be intimidating. So then when we're in the teacher's classroom, I will deliberately sit in a student's chair, even if it's kindergarten, and have the teacher sit in his or her chair, which is typically higher up. So now I've taken some of that away psychologically. So I'm sitting lower. So the teacher's looking down on me as opposed to the other way around. So just the little tricks, I might want to take the tie off, might want to take the jacket off, all that kind of thing. Just these little tricks to make that environment as comfortable as I can.
That is practical and easy to miss. Where you sit, where the conversation happens, what the teacher is expecting, even whether the leader seems physically intimidating, all of that affects whether feedback can be heard. And then he gives the third move.
I initially want to ask you, what were your impressions of whatever it was we were focused on? Not the whole class. If we can talk about the whole class later on if the teacher wants to, but what I went in there for, what were your thoughts? And I'll hear from the teacher. And I'll find out in making the conversation work, I will look for areas of agreement first, right? I don't want to, we're on opposite sides as soon as we start talking. No, I agree with you. And then that'll be my opening to talk about things that I feel that we can still get better. And now we'll have that particular conversation. And again, as I harp on so much, the people skills, the communication skills, right? So that I can have a conversation with this teacher and this teacher can hear me, right? So therefore, I would say to leaders who are going to see this, how we are with teacher A may not be who we are with teacher B, nor teacher C. Who I am with audience A is not who I am with audience B.
That is the whole feedback section in one line. It's not a gotcha, it's a grow you. The feedback still has to be honest. Leaders cannot avoid hard conversations just because they are uncomfortable. But honest feedback is easier to hear when the leader has built the conditions for the teacher to receive it. And leaders are not only supporting teachers instructionally, they are also leading people with very different experiences, values, assumptions, and motivations. That is where Dr. Tony Johnson's conversation comes in.
But guess what? When we go to work and we're in schools and we're teachers and we're counselors and we're principals, we got to get all these generations to work together in harmony for students, parents, and our community. And how do we do that when we have very different value systems on the approach? And what I tell them is one is no better. Looking at these columns on the screen, one is no better than the other. But we have to figure out how to work successfully with each other.
A school leader is not leading one audience. They're leading veteran teachers, new teachers, counselors, students, families, and community members who may all bring different assumptions about schools, work, motivation, and success. That means leaders cannot assume that the reason something mattered to them as a student, teacher, or leader will automatically be the reason it matters to someone else. Dr. Tony Johnson talked about this through generational differences and the need to create common ground. That is an important leadership reminder. That connects directly to the final move. School leaders communicate all day long. Emails, texts, announcements, meetings, newsletters, hallway conversations, feedback, quick answers between emergencies. And because there is always another thing to do, it's easy to confuse fast communication with effective communication. Thomas Murray shared a story about a time he responded quickly to a teacher and realized later that his short answer has damaged trust, even though that was never his intention.
Let me actually start with a story if I could. And
Yeah.
it's a story about a time that I really screwed up. This is not Tom coming in saying, here's how I perfected as when I was a school leader. It's about a time that I goofed it up. But we were having this faculty meeting the night before, and we were working through some things. We had to decide some things as a building, and it was a dynamic but challenging conversation, and people put a lot of thought into it. There's some significant disagreement. And it was one of those things we were trying to iron something out as a staff in terms of which direction we were going. I was trying to give people voice and all this stuff. That night, I had one of my teachers reach out. She put a whole lot of thought into this email. Could we do this and this? And here's just a different idea. She probably has at least spent an hour laying out her thoughts and all these ideas. I didn't see it that night. I got up the next day and I had an admin staffing meeting. So I was over with the other administrators in the district, and I'm driving back over around lunchtime. I've got the burger in one hand. I'm at a stoplight. I wasn't driving. I look at my phone. I look at my email. I see it real quick, and I saw where she was coming from, but there was a big flag. Legally, we couldn't do something that she was suggesting. And so in my rush to communicate back to her, I simply said, hey, no, we can't do that. And that's not me. I'm an Enneagram 3 with a 2-wing, meaning like I'm that person that's typically saying, hey, first of all, how's your grandma doing? I know she was in the hospital. I hope you're doing well, and all these pieces. But for me, I had 300 emails in my inbox. I'm trying to get back to her. I'm sitting at a stoplight, chewing on my burger, and just wanted to get back to her quickly. I didn't think much of it until the end of the day when she walks in and there's tears in her eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, like what happened? Having no connection to me causing it. And she closed the door and she said, hey, can I talk to you for a sec? And I said, sure, what's going on? And she looked at me and she said, did I upset you? I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about. Literally, I'm looking like, and I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? No, not at all. And she said, I put a lot of thought into that email and you gave me a 1-sentence response, and that's just not normally you. And I just want to make sure I didn't upset you, first of all. I have to tell you, I literally almost had tears on the spot. What a humbling moment for me, because in my rush to communicate, in my rush to share out information, I shattered her afternoon. Right. And she probably all afternoon felt sick. It probably threw off her teaching. Here, fortunately, we had a relationship prior that she could come to me and say, hey, that didn't seem right or off. As an administrator, part of my communication, I had to apologize and say, hey, can you take a seat? First of all, you're right. I'm so sorry. I'm sitting at a stoplight responding to you, and you deserved more than that. And I apologize for that. Can I explain really why we can't do it? We talked for 45 minutes, but first and foremost, I had to lead with an apology because I was wrong. My communication in the rush to get back to her ruined her day. I'm glad she had the courage to come to me as a leader, because I wouldn't have thought twice about that. And how many times do people not come to people because it's a boss or a supervisor and they're afraid to say something? And I was very well-meaning, trying to get back to the person. I knew in my head why we couldn't do it. But as a teacher, she might not have that understanding. And I'm so glad she did, because if not, I could have shut down voice. I could have shut down her courage. I could have broken trust. And at the end of the day, and what I'm calling the session this summer is great educators are great communicators. I did not model that in that moment. And when I think about the culture side, the relationship side, the trust side, all of those pieces come with communication. And part of the reason I share that story is, number one, I've messed this up countless times. But number two, we've got to be super sensitive, especially as school and district leaders, that our communication is everything. Whether we're communicating with our families, with a student that's in our office, whether we're communicating our staff about a new initiative or supervision, something that has to grow or get better, communication is vital.
That story is such a useful reminder, because the mistake was not cruelty. It was speed. And that's what makes it so familiar. A leader may be trying to respond quickly, solve a problem, clear the inbox, or keep the day moving. But the person receiving the message may not have all the context in the leader's head. Strong communication is not just clear, it's human. So, if we pull these 6 ideas together, strong school leadership is not about having all the answers or carrying the whole building on your back. It's about creating the conditions where the work can move forward with clarity, trust, and shared ownership. First, clarify the focus so people can act on it. Second, make data something students can own. Third, move from I work to we work. Fourth, make feedback a growth conversation, not a gotcha. Fifth, lead across different motivations and generations. And sixth, communicate slowly enough to protect trust. None of those moves is flashy, but all of them matter. Because culture is not just what a leader says in August. It's what people hear repeated, what data they understand, who gets involved into the work, how feedback feels, whether different people can find common ground, and how communication lands when the pressure is on. Thank you for joining me for this summer highlight episode of the Making Schools Work podcast. We'll be back soon with another look at some of the strongest ideas from our first 2 seasons. Until then, keep building the kind of school where the focus is clear, the data is useful, the work is shared, the feedback helps people grow, and people know they are trusted. Thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.